Alright, so hello everyone. We're going to be looking at the programming assignment for Unit 3. For Unit 3, we need to modify the quiz class that we did from Unit 2's programming assignment. So if you have not gone through the Unit 2 programming assignment, this will be totally confusing to you. Alright, let's move forward just the same. We've been asked to create a method that asks a quiz question and a method that checks the answer. So we're actually modifying our assignment. We're given some instructions here on what to do if we're using Eclipse. I'm going to show you both using it on Replit and Eclipse, because for some reasons you may not be able to use Eclipse, or you may already be using Eclipse. So we need a static method that asks a question until user provides valid input. So we need a method that asks a question. Let me just highlight the part that we're going to be focusing on first in red. Okay, and we're given more details about how we should actually do that by making it a static method. So this gives us the details on what we should make it like. Alright, so let's look at our program that we have and see how best we can do that. So I'm showing you here the program it runs properly. This is on Replit. The only drawback to using Replit is that you have to always name your top class main, but you can just simply replace this word and call it quiz when you're saving your code as in the text file, but the output will be exactly the same. Alright, if you are using Eclipse, then you can keep it exactly as the name of the Java file, quiz.java and quiz. Alright, so this limitation is only for people that are using replit.com. As you can see here on the Eclipse IDE, I can call the class quiz and it runs fine. Okay. Alright, so for this main program here that we're looking at, where the quiz, what should be called quiz, as I said before. So I could actually just change the name to quiz here, but it won't run. Okay, but just so I don't confuse you, I'll just say that there, right? I'll change this to quiz to show that quiz should really be there. Alright, but I put that main so that our program can run. We want to actually get the static method in. Alright, so what we want to do is let's push this down and start working on creating our static method above. Okay, remember that our main method, not to be confused with the main class, our main method is where our program starts to run from. Okay, so all our classes can be built above it. Alright, we need a static method that asks a question. So it tells us to use a static method, so we have to start with the keyword static. And what else should this method do? Alright, let us just check and see what this method should do. It should ask a quiz question until user provides valid input. Alright, so let's get back to it. So we see the question being asked in our first version of the quiz question here by using a string. Okay, so we will need to have a string that is returned, because this function needs to take something and it needs to return something. Okay, it needs to return a string and it needs to take a string. So if it's going to return a string, then we put the word string, the keyword string, outside, and we're told to name it ask. This is what we're actually told to use, so we must use it. And it's going to take the string question, a string variable called question. Okay, let me just define the variable as an empty method, right, without anything there. Like you can do it like that, you can do it like that, that's fine. So we're just defining what the empty variables the empty functions will be, or empty methods will be, okay? It's static. It needs to return a string because we're going to have to send the string value to the check method, okay? So just imagine that the check method existed, and the check method should also be static, but it's not going to return anything because it's just going to check it, and when something doesn't return, it's void, and we're told to name it check, okay? It is going to take the question that we return from the first method at the top here. Alright, so that's why we have string question there. And let's just put two empty curly brackets there. Alright, so it's an empty function body. So if we go back to the question, let's see what it says here. Alright, we're going to modify our quiz class so that we have a quiz question method and a check method. Alright, a method that asks a question and a method that checks the answer. Alright, so far we just have empty methods here, okay? So if I close this up, you can use this arrow here where you have the functions being defined, and you see it closes up the curly brackets even though they're empty. So these are our two methods here. So I can say here as a comment, this method will ask a question. Then I can say here, this method will check the question. Check the, well, more specifically, check the answer to the question. Alright, so let's go ahead and expand this, because this is the one we're working on right now. String ask question. So the the static string ask question method needs to do what this block of code was doing, okay? So if we're going to be doing that, then we need to make sure that it does exactly what we need it to do until the user enters the correct answer. So that means we need a loop, because remember, we had a loop in our original quiz program. Here is our while loop there, okay? And if we check the question once more, and we go to the second clarification of the question, it should ask a question until the user provides valid input. Okay. Alright, we have already named it ask. We know that it takes a string parameter and it returns a string. We've done that. But it must ask a question until. When you see the word until, that means a while loop. Okay? So let's go. So we need a while loop that checks. So let's go inside of our method body. And we'll start with while, and we'll say true, because at some point the condition will not be true. And let's put in an empty while loop body there, okay? So what you want to do, basically start with your empty function bodies, and method bodies, and empty while structures, and then you fill in the code later like a sandwich, okay? So we have the while loop in. Now we just need to fill it in as to what is it going to do, or how is it going to be responding to the questions, okay? Now it's going to be a situation where the ask question method is going to ask us a question, and we're going to have to enter a choice, okay? I have on the screen here, if you look on the right, the screen that we should be getting. Just like with our original programs, that we're doing it in a different manner. We're putting the different parts of the code in blocks, in function blocks, in method blocks. So it still should do a similar thing that this input function does, okay? I'm not going to click the answer in because I just want to leave that on the screen for a little visual guide. Okay, so it's going to need to get our answer, right? Because our answer that we put in this method here will be sent to the next method that's called check. So answer, sorry, it's a string answer. We need to get that input from the user. How do we do that? We say j option, sorry, it's a lowercase p, j option pane dot show input dialog. All right. Now, the show input dialog will work because we will have a question that will be sent to it. This question will be something like, what is the best degree to take? And we'll have these options there, right? So remember, the show input dialog box has a screen that pops up with information, and the information that we will present to it will be a string variable called question. Okay, it will be a string variable called question. We don't see that just yet because we haven't finished our program. So just work with me until we go through the logic of the program. All right. So, it's not used yet, of course. So let's move on to the next line. We want to make sure that the answer is uppercase because we're going to be checking for uppercase matches. So answer equals to, this means an update to, and we're going to use a to uppercase function to force it to be uppercase, whatever we choose. If you choose a lowercase c, whatever it will be, just how we need it to be. Alright, now ask a question. This ask a question must take a valid, it must absolutely take a valid option. Has to be A, B, C, D, or E. It's just the same as what we did before. We're just putting this inside of a method, okay? What we're actually doing is we're taking our original quiz question and putting the logic here inside of the method. So this logic here that checks to see if we have an answer that is valid, it has to be something from A, B, C, D, or E. Anything else is not valid. We have to check this, okay? Otherwise, the question, we're not asking a valid question. So I know I'm duplicating the code that's already there, but rather than actually go in and just mess this around, I'm just creating something totally separate from scratch up here to help to illustrate you so that you can follow me a lot clearer. And we need to make sure that answer is valid, okay? So we need a true or false. True or false is Boolean. It's a Boolean type of variable. Alright, and we'll call it valid. And we're going to be doing a check using a string method. So answer, any string can we use the dot equals method. So we created a string variable at the top here on line 7, on line 6 and 7. So we're going to here say now answer dot equals, this is really a check. Remember, the dot equals string method is a checking method. We're not just checking for one letter, we're checking for all 5 letters, okay? So because we're checking for all 5 letters, we need to make sure that we use some OR conditions, and you use this double vertical line as saying OR. And then answer dot equals open bracket quotation B or answer. So you're doing this for all 5 letters, okay? We're going to make sure that we have the right number of closed, open and closed brackets by the time we get to the end, the last one, which is E. Answer dot equals capital D, and then the final one, or answer dot equals capital E. Alright, of course we need to end with a semicolon. Alright, so this part here would check if it's a valid answer, right? So if any of these, let's say the person entered T as in Tom, you know, that's not valid, so it would store false inside this variable called valid. Okay? Alright. So then as long as it is not valid, we're going to keep asking the person what's going on. So let me expand this, get more space on this. Okay, so look where the while loop is. Okay, the while loop ends here. It's always good to track where the curly brackets end. So while loop ends here. So that means if I use an if statement to check if it is valid, because remember we did the same thing in our original function, right? I remember that we would only break out of the loop if the option was valid, if the answer was valid. So let's go back at the top here. We're doing the same thing here. So we're going to say if valid, which is going to be basically asking you if it's true. Then remember, if it's a valid option, we don't know if it's right or wrong yet. We just know it has to be A, B, C, or D, or E. If none of those letters are chosen, then we can't accept whatever they're typed at the keyboard. But if it is valid, then we're going to send that answer back to whatever calls the function, and that's why you use a return statement. Because remember, we're told that this ask method, this ask string, is supposed to return a string. That's why we have the keyword string here, because it returns a string. Okay, so let me expand that again. Right, so then we will return answer. No, it's very possible that it might not be valid, so we need a condition, or we need some code that takes care of that. So anything that happens outside of this indentation here on line 10 is only going to happen if it's false, if valid equals to false. So we would say with a message, so this J option pane that we're going to use here now is only going to appear if the input wasn't valid. Okay, we're going to show them a message dialog. Remember, the first part is always null. We won't get into why that is right now. Just for now, know that you just need to use a second argument after the comma. We're going to show them a message to say that answer is not valid. Please enter A, B, C, D, or E. Alright, and let's end with a semicolon. Alright, and that completes our use of or creation of the ask string method. Okay, the method called check is going to actually use our method called ask. So we can minimize this method here just so we can concentrate on what's happening at a higher level. Or maybe I could just minimize the while loop. Let's minimize everything so that we just focus on the higher level of the function. Alright, when we are checking the answer, what are we doing when we're checking the answer? We want to make sure that we have placed in the function a method that will tell us if the answer is correct. Okay, let us see what the question says the check method should have with it. So let me go over. Alright, it says a method that checks the answer. We need a method that will check the answer, okay? Alright, let's go back to our code. How do we check our answers? Well, when we were checking our answer in the original version of the quiz program, what did we do? In the original version of the quiz program, we said if answer.equals and we chose an answer, in this case it was B, and we'd print a message with a show message dialog saying you are correct. So we're going to do a similar thing with our modified version of the program. Alright, so remember I said before, we're building our methods above the public static void main method, which every Java program should have. so that we can keep our code separated and neat, rather than just simply deleting what I had there before. I think this is an easier way for me to modify it personally. Alright, so let's go inside of our check string method, and we will have a call to the ask method. Okay, we need to have the answer being sent to a special variable. It must be a string variable because the answer is a string variable, right? It's a string variable, and we are going to have it ask the question that is sent to it. We haven't created the questions yet, right? That part is coming, but we're just preparing for that. So notice that we're going to call the function called ask. It will have the question as a variable taken as a parameter. As you can see here, we will be asking the question based on what is sent to the check function. Okay, this will become clearer as we go through. If we're going to check to see if the answer is correct, you have to use an if statement. So I have to say if answer, and remember equals is a check-in method, and we're going to say correct answer because we're going to have a variable called correct answer in our method. Sorry about that, I actually left out the other parameter, which should be correct answer, because you're going to give it the correct answer at the same time as you give the question. So there are two things in the check-in method. You're going to send it to the check-in method. Remember, the parameters are things that you send to the method. You're going to send the question to this method or this function. Method, function are two names you can use for the same thing. So we're going to send the question to the function, and we're also going to send the answer, the correct answer that the question has. So you're sending these two bits of data at the same time, okay? So sorry, forgive me for leaving that out. Now an if statement here needs to have a condition because it might be true or false, okay? So let me put that empty true or false there. It needs to tell me, hey, I'm correct if I'm correct, or I'm incorrect if I'm incorrect, okay? So let me go ahead and say, remember we're using JOption pane for all of our displays. JOption pane.show message dialog. Remember, we start with null always as the first value for the show message dialog, and we can say you are correct, right? Because if the answer equals correct answer, it's obviously correct. If it's not, then we need an else. Okay, so we would say else. And we're gonna once again use a JOption pane to give a message. What's happening here? Is it it's making my code look all kind of a weird kind of way. Alright, wait, do I have two JOption panes there? For some reason I did. Alright, JOption pane dot show message. We want to print a message that is not correct. Show message dialog. This is a lot of typing, but hey, that's how Java is. And if it's not correct, it must be incorrect. So we're saying you are incorrect. And we want to tell them what the correct answer is. The correct answer is, because we're going to be telling the scores, of course. So they won't get a chance to do this one over. It will already mark them as incorrect. The correct answer is, let's leave a little space for the variable that will be printed, and we're going to show them the correct answer, which is correct answer. Alright, and yeah, okay, so that's fine. Let's put a semicolon to end our statement. Alright, do we need anything else? Let me just put a quotation here, comment here, sorry. End of else branch. probably a bit overkill for me to put that there, because I mean you probably figure that the else ends there. So let me just leave that alone. Alright, so we're pretty much done with the main idea of our function that will do the checking of the answer. Well, let's just check our question once more. Okay. So we have the loop to check repeatedly until the user provides a valid answer. We're asking using J option paint show input dialog. We have that. We converted the lowercase to uppercase. We did that. Okay. Alright, so we actually, oh, there is actually a part of the question that I forgot to include. So let me quickly get to that.